Welcome to our extended coverage here from the 11 Alive Storm Trackers as we track these strong storms that are moving our way. I'm meteorologist Chris Holcomb along with meteorologist Chesley McNeil. Meteorologist Melissa Nord is here. Meteorologist Andrew Wilson is here. Bobeth Yates is in Thunder Truck. She'll be joining us throughout the afternoon as well as these storms are going to be moving into northwest Georgia. Thunder Truck's moving up to northwest to be in position as these storms move in. Chesley, you've been tracking these storms all morning. I was watching them last night when they were in Texas, and they did cause a lot of damage in Texas. This is what is left of that line right now, and it is still a strong line of storms that is moving closer to us right now. We've got all the lightning with it. It is over in Alabama, moving at a pretty good clip over Alabama right now, and we expect it to push into northwest Georgia really within the hour, maybe closer to 2 o'clock when it moves into the northwest Georgia area. And along that line, we have numerous severe thunderstorm warnings with very strong winds.
Yeah, we should watch that line start to amp up a little bit. As it was moving through Mississippi, didn't have as much strength with it, but that was during the early morning hours. Now that we're getting into the afternoon, we're starting to see this line begin to intensify a bit, and we're expecting to see, we have numerous severe thunderstorm warnings associated with it, but we're watching to see if there's a tornado warning right there. It just popped up right there. Yeah. So now we're starting to see that. Now that's moving up into the Tennessee area. A lot of this, the dynamics, the upper level dynamics with this system is a little further off to the north of us, and expecting that to begin to pull to the north. But what has changed for us is that we're expecting that area of low pressure to be a little bit stronger now as it moves up to the north, which means that we could see some strong thunderstorms over us. Chris just popped up the tornado watch. It will last
try to
until
put the warning in there for you too.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right, this right here is the watch that will last until 5 o'clock our time, 4 o'clock over into Alabama. You can see the counties associated with that. But again, we're watching that line of showers and thunderstorms as it continues to push over toward the east. Has been moving at a pretty decent clip. Now, the system overall has begun to slow down, which is not good for us. When we were looking at this yesterday, the timing had it moving in around the noon hour. That would have been a little bit more favorable for us because we wouldn't have gotten into so much of the daytime heating. But now that the daytime heating is starting to amp up, and we're starting to see a few breaks in those clouds, which would add to the instability. We're expecting these storms to have the potential to be even stronger as they move into our neck of the woods. So we'll be watching that as well as those storms continue to move through. But we have seen, and Melissa has told us that we've seen, even with the severe thunderstorm warnings, those winds up to about 77 miles per hour with one.
Yeah, and you know, the main criteria for a severe thunderstorm warning is winds of 58 miles an hour or greater, or hail of 1 inch in diameter or greater. These storms, as you've been saying, have those winds of around 70 miles an hour. Melissa saw in one of the warnings, one of the storms had a 77 mile an hour wind with it. So that's the thing that we're watching. There are a lot of ingredients at play right now of what we have to be aware of this afternoon. Not only this line of storms has heavy rain with it, it has the thunderstorm winds, but then also the general winds with this are very strong too. And that's really going to be gusting as we go through the daytime hours. I'm going to step over this way because I want to show you our tower cam in Noonan. We're seeing some breaks in the clouds. Some of our tower cams have been showing some breaks in the clouds where the sun comes through. That is actually not a good thing. A lot of people might look at that and say, oh good, the sun's coming out, we're going to be fine. But if the sun breaks through ahead of this line, that is where we're going to get more heating, and that just kind of feeds the fuel of these storms. And Chesley, these storms are coming in during the heat of the day. A lot of times when we get these storms coming in at night, the air will be a little more stable, things will start to die down a little bit, but the timing of this one brings it in the heat of the day, when even though things look intense right now in Alabama, these could be stronger by the time they move into our area.
Meaning that we were talking about the possibility of brief spin-up tornadoes. With that instability increasing, you talk about maybe even longer tornadoes, lasting longer in our area, especially up here to the north. That has been our focus so far, mainly up in the northern areas because of that area of low pressure that slides further off to the north. So Chris is going to talk to you about the tornado environment and what that means.
So this is what we call the significant tornado parameter. This is just one of the tools that we use to access what type of atmospheric conditions that we have, and we're seeing some really high levels in the significant tornado parameter. But I want to caution you as you look at this, just because you see a lot of the oranges and reds, this isn't a guarantee of where we're going to see tornadoes move through. But this shows us that as these storms push through northwest Georgia and into the metro Atlanta area, the environment does have the conditions with it that within that line, any of these storms could begin to rotate and maybe start to form tornadoes with it. And we could see tornado warnings throughout the afternoon as the line moves on through. So you can see here, these are pretty high levels. Chesley, we've been doing this for a long time. And in Georgia, we don't see these high levels very often, and that's why the Storm Prediction Center has moved or actually extended and expanded that enhanced risk over North Georgia. This is going to be through the afternoon, 4 o'clock. Now again, we think the line of storms would be more right here around 4 o'clock, moving through the metro area and then pushing away, and then the tornado threat goes down once that storm moves on out of our area.
Yeah, you talk about those colors there. Typically we would see maybe the white and the yellow, so those are on the very low end of our legend, but now we're starting to see those oranges and reds. Has some concern for us, as we are monitoring these storms. We talked about the Storm Prediction Centers expanding the level 3 or the enhanced risk for severe weather. Let's take this full. I'll go over to the key and just kind of explain it to you here. This is a wide area of an enhanced risk, and you can see the number of states that's included in this, from Kentucky all the way down into North Georgia. When we were talking about this morning, in fact, it wasn't even with us yesterday. Yesterday we just had the slight risk. They expanded the far northwestern counties in this morning. So we were just talking about this little corner here from Dade, Walker County over toward Fanning, Gilmer County, down toward Floyd County. Now it has been extended a little bit further down to the south to include northern parts of Paulding County, Cobb County included in this, also northern parts of Full County, just about all of Forsyth County, and then further over toward the east, over toward Union Towns County and Rabun County. Now it's included in that because of this area of low pressure. Now, not because it will move closer to us, but because it is getting stronger. That's what we've been watching this afternoon, which means a little better risk for those tornadoes in this particular area. Now, just south of that, we have the yellow area here, or the level 2 threat. That doesn't mean that we won't see tornadoes in this particular area. Brief spin-ups are still possible from Atlanta over toward the Athens area, a little bit further down to the south to include some of our southern counties. Further down to the south, where you see that dark green, is a level 1 threat, a little bit lower of a threat as far as the tornadoes go in that particular area. Here's what we can expect for the rest of the afternoon. We're talking about heavy rain in our forecast area. Okay, so there could be some localized flooding with some of those heavy downpours. It's a small line right now, but what we have been noticing over into Alabama is that it has been expanding just a little bit as it pushes over toward the east. The tornado threat right now on the low side, but again, we could get that brief spin up, and if we get the instability to increase, then we're talking about an even greater risk for those tornadoes, but right now on the low side. But what's also moderate is also those damaging winds. Now, not only the winds that we have aloft or over our heads very strong, and with the thunderstorms and that rain, that can mix down to the surface, so that produces some very strong winds. Also, the winds out of the south coming in out of Heather Front are very strong as well. Here to talk a little bit more about that is meteorologist Melissa Nord.
Yeah, and you know what? Those winds have been picking up, Chesley, already in northwest Georgia the last couple of hours. We have a chat room that we're in with other meteorologists from not just TV stations, but the National Weather Service and stuff. One thing I want to point out that came in right as you guys were getting on the air, Chris and Chesley, is they've released a special weather balloon. And they do these twice a day normally, but in advance of big weather systems, they will issue special weather balloons to get a sampling of what our ingredients are in the atmosphere. And they're saying that there's a pretty big cap. It's like a lid. Once that lid kind of breaks off, we can tap into all that storm energy and the storms can really grow. But they're saying that there's a pretty big cap on all the weather data that's coming in, the sounding that they have released, and a new mesoscale discussion from the Storm Prediction Center. For those of you who follow kind of the weather community, some of our inner conversations, something just released by the Storm Prediction Center saying that the next hour to an hour and a half, the wind gust threat will really continue in northwest Georgia. And I want to show you some of those wind gusts that we've been experiencing here over the last 30 minutes. Let me show you some live cameras. This one's downtown. I've been watching a couple breaks in the clouds, also some breaks in the clouds in Noonan. We have the flags there starting to blow really high in the winds. But look at this Rome camera. I mean, these winds have been whipping in these gusts that have been increasing over the last 30 minutes. Now gusting to 41 miles per hour up towards Floyd County, 33 mile per hour gust in Dalton. Canton is 26. Also in Atlanta, I was telling you on the news at 12:30 how we were going to start to see over the next hour the gusts increasing in the metro. We now are gusting to 28 in Atlanta, and this will only go up pretty significantly over the next couple hours as those storms squeeze their way into North Georgia. But here's the wind alerts that we have for us. We have a wind advisory for the metro and pretty much all of North Georgia. In that area, winds could gust to 45 miles per hour. But in this orange color, Fannin, Gilmer counties, Dade, Walker, Catoosa over towards Murray County and Whitfield counties, we have a high wind warning, which we don't see issued here very often. This is not talking about from a thunderstorm, but outside of thunderstorms, the winds are really going to be ferocious this afternoon. So here's the hour-by-hour picture of these wind gusts over the next 30 minutes. In the metro, starting to see them picking up a little bit more. Then they're going to peak as that line of storms is pushing into North Georgia. We'll see those winds gusting as high as 45 miles per hour. You notice here, forecast track at 5:30, still some really strong winds. This evening, after the line of storms pushes through, we won't be quite as windy. We'll still have some gusts 20 to 30 miles per hour. And then gradually overnight, those winds will get a little bit lighter, a little bit lighter, a little bit lighter. But they are going to be a big deal for us, even outside the thunderstorm threats of those really strong winds. And Chesley, it looks like there is a new tornado warning that was just issued on the other side of the state line. I'm going to zoom in right here so we can see it, just across the state line in northeastern Alabama for Jackson County. And that's radar indicated as of right now. But something we'll have to watch for, Dade, Walker, and Catoosa counties, which are technically not our viewing area, but in northwest Georgia, to see if that rotation will end up holding together. All right, let's talk more about the timing, Chesley.
Yeah, we're going to be seeing this move right on into the area, starting in our northwestern counties first, and then make its way down toward the metro area. And that tornado watch that you see at the bottom of the screen scrolling there, that will last till 5 o'clock, but we do suspect that to be extended a little bit further over toward the east to include the Atlanta metro area and then our counties over toward the east as well as we head, or at least as the front gets a little bit closer to our area. Right now, just off to our north and west, we've been watching, as Melissa just showed us, those tornado warnings that are starting to pop up. Here is that line of showers and thunderstorms. It's right along this line here where we'll start to see some of the more gusty winds that are associated with the thunderstorms. Still have gusty winds out of the south with that pressure gradient starting to tighten up just a little bit. Here is that line pushing in, we suspect within the next 50 minutes or so into our far northwestern counties, Dade, Walker County, down toward the Rome area over into Floyd County. That will start to slide in. We'll see those gusty winds, watching for any rotation along this line. But even with any severe thunderstorm warnings that are issued, again, we can see some straight line winds up to about 58, 60 miles per hour. Again, has a history of producing winds in the 70 mile per hour range. And so that's going to be very strong and significant. So you don't have to have a tornado warning in your area to have some damage. It could be a severe thunderstorm warning, or some of these winds that are being clocked up to 70 miles per hour. We have to watch out for that as well. With the rain that we've had already, the ground a little bit saturated, a little bit soaked there. And so it doesn't take much wind, especially for a weak tree, to fall down, of course, as the winds begin to push in. So this line moves a little bit further toward the metro area as we get into the 3 o'clock hour, 4 o'clock hour now approaching the west side of the city of Atlanta, down toward the Peachtree City area as well. That will begin to push through. Notice those winds a little bit strong, even behind the front as it moves into the area. Should be by us, or at least moving over toward our east now. By the time we get toward 5, 6 o'clock, a lot of our easternmost counties and cities experiencing that. Covington over toward the Athens area. Now you're getting on some of these winds. Now, here's something else to pay attention to. We expect this line to weaken somewhat as it continues to push over toward the east, as it continues to push southeast. Drying will start to take place behind the front, and so we're expecting the skies to begin to dry out a little bit as we head toward the 7 o'clock hour into the 8 o'clock hour as well. And so we'll be watching for the clearing to take place. It's really going to set us up for a beautiful weekend. Hopefully you won't have to get out and assess a lot of that damage that may be the case. Although, even if we don't see a tornado, I do suspect, Chris, that there could be some damage from winds in the area because of the wind advisory and the threat. Combined with the threat for the severe weather, winds really going to be the major issue for this afternoon.
Yeah, and that's the point that we want everybody to understand. We're going to be, of course, watching the storms as they roll through our area today, but also keeping an eye on those winds ahead of the storms and behind the storms too. Right behind your shoulder there, as Melissa showed us, the Rome flags. The storms are not there yet, but the wind is really kicking up ahead of these storms. And again, we want to just kind of go through this again and let you guys know what we've got going on. Melissa's got some information. If we can cue her mic. Yeah, can we pull up my mic really quick? So we're in this chat room with the National Weather Service, and something they've done in Huntsville that the National Weather Service here in Peachtree City is saying they could potentially do is they issue these catastrophic severe thunderstorm warnings, meaning the winds could be 80 miles per hour. That causes the same destruction
as a tornado, maybe in a different format, but they're saying that might be a tool in their toolbox that they'll be able to use this year that last year was a very new tool that just came out for us. And that will trigger, if we get one of those catastrophic severe thunderstorm warnings, that triggers the phones to go off just like a tornado warning. So that's a tool that they might use today, and that brings up a good point that you should have multiple ways to get warnings.
Yeah, and of course, download our app, have that there, and make sure you enable the alerts there so that you can see, when those storms are issued, it'll give you an alert. Also, the best thing is the National Weather Service radio, to have one of those and make sure it's programmed for your county so that you'll know what's going on. And when you're talking about that, there are different levels of warnings that are issued, whether they're tornado warnings or
I'll work
severe
on getting that
thunderstorm
up
warnings.
here.
And Melissa was just kind of talking about that, where it could be considerable damage, catastrophic damage, destructive storms. So now those different tags and what they have with those warnings determines what is sent to your phone if you have those alerts enabled on your phone there. And most likely you're going to be receiving some of those messages out there today.
Absolutely. And you help us tell the story. If you can safely take photos or videos, you want to send those in to us, we can put that on the air here and let people know exactly what's happening in your neighborhood or in and around your area. So we want you to do that safely, of course, but we really appreciate the videos and the photos.
So
Here's Melissa's got that info there.
Yeah, these are those new types of, they're still all severe thunderstorm warnings, but there's different levels of severe thunderstorm warnings now. So that destructive warning, when we could have winds of 80 miles per hour, which they did see out in northern Alabama, that triggers your phone. That means winds could be 80 miles per hour. We rarely see those issued except for derechos and extreme situations like that. So we hope that doesn't happen here, but based on what we've seen and the damage that they're seeing in Alabama, that trend could continue and be needed for Northwest Georgia.
All right, so we're continuing to watch those warnings that are going to be issued most likely during the afternoon hours. Let's come back here. We'll show you radar as we're seeing this. We're going to hold on with you for about another couple of minutes, and then we're going to bail out on our digital coverage here because we'll be doing a live update on 11 Alive. And of course, we're going to have more coverage for you in just a little bit. So they'll be giving us a countdown in just a second of when we're going to wrap up. But Chesley, here's that line. We're watching this move our way, and it's moving pretty quickly through Alabama. So it is getting closer to Northwest Georgia right now. Here we are at 1:17 in the afternoon. We're thinking the timing's going to be just about right of what you've been saying all morning, moving into Northwest Georgia, most likely close to 2 o'clock.
Yeah. Looks like it's going to be right on time.
And it's very strong there. Melissa noticed that, or mentioned that tornado warning that's up in North Alabama. So even though, Dade and Walker County is not legally in our viewing area, that belongs to the Chattanooga market, but we know that some of you in Northwest Georgia right now might be watching us online. Be aware, Dade and Walker County, there is a tornado warning over the line into Alabama that could be moving your way soon if that holds together. I think a lot of that might move up closer to Chattanooga, more of that northeasterly direction here. But then we have this line of storms continuing to move closer to us, Chesley. And what we've been saying, though, and I remember showing folks last night on the forecast track, that this line is really small, and I'm afraid a lot of people are going to be looking at this thinking, oh, that's it. But the problem is within that line, those storms are really have the conditions likely to become severe and to have that rotation with them.
And you're talking about winds in the 70 mile per hour range. You're talking about a small hurricane, folks. So that can really do a lot of damage, folks. So you really need to be weather aware this afternoon as those storms continue to push through.
An EF0 tornado, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, it has winds around 80 miles an hour. That's the smallest of what we would, and of course the tornado has to have the rotation with it and everything. But when you're talking about just general wind speeds, even if these storms are not tornadic, the winds could be just as strong as a tornado. Just the structure of that storm would be a little bit different.
And create the same type of damage. We talk about that when we go out and assess the winds. We say straight line damage, wind damage, but even with that, you're talking about a line of trees down, you're talking about roofs being blown off of homes. And so you look for rotation, of course, with the tornadoes, but straight line wind damage can do the same trick.
And that's what the STP shows, a significant tornado parameter. Again, this is not definitely where tornadoes are going to occur, but this is where the atmospheric conditions are there for some of these rotating storms to develop. So keep it with us here, the 11 Alive Storm Team. We are on top of this as these storms roll through. Andrew Wilson is also here. Bo Beth Yates is in Thunder Truck. We'll have coverage on air and online throughout the afternoon hour. So keep it right here with the 11 Alive Storm Trackers.